Hi, everyone. Pete Sardis for The Lawyer You Know, and we are back today talking about Sunny Balwani's sentencing. It is done. I'm going to tell you what happened. I'm also going to compare that sentence to the sentence that Elizabeth Holmes received just a few weeks ago. But before we do that, as always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you've enjoyed this series, please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. And as always, leave me questions and comments down below. All right, let's get into it. Sunny Balwani sentenced yesterday. At the end of the day, the prosecutors had asked for 15 years for Mr. Balwani. The judge gives him 13 years of prison and, of course, a special assessment of $100 per count. Now, remember, Sunny Balwani was convicted of all 12 counts, including the counts involving the patients. Elizabeth Holmes did not get convicted on the counts involving patients, so her special assessment was only $900. I know, big deal, right? But at the end of the day, that is the sentence that the judge has handed down. And let's talk kind of the difference between why Elizabeth Holmes gets 11 years, 3 months, and Sunny Balwani gets 13 years. Again, the prosecutors asked for the same amount of time for both 15, and as we've talked about numerous times, the reality is they scored off the charts on the sentencing guidelines. So between you and me, from my perspective, I believe Judge Davila gave a very reasonable sentence. They should be, I don't know if the word happy is right, but they should at least respect the fact that they received sentences less than the government's recommendation, less than the guidelines recommendation. There is a substantial downward departure for both of them. And they're both going to be allowed to self-surrender. Now, Elizabeth Holmes, as you remember, is being allowed to self-surrender to federal prison on the 14th, in April. Let's back up. In April. Sunny Balwani has an actual turn-in date for March 15th. That's when he presents to federal prison. Now, from Sunny Balwani's perspective, 13 years is a lot of time. Realize 13 years actually means that he most probably will serve 80% of that sentence in federal prison. So he'll actually do 10 years behind bars. That 10 years from a guy that's 57 years old really means, the last part of his, middle adult life. Beyond that, he's going to be 67 years old when he leaves prison, presuming he doesn't get in a bunch of fights and have issues inside of the Bureau of Prisons. Then, realistically speaking, you're coming up back into society at age 67. It's not the best time to, to try to reacclimate yourself to civilian life. So let's kind of talk about the circumstances. Elizabeth Holmes' defense team, I think, did a great job in demonstrating that she was a victim. How do I think that that's the case? Because she actually beat 3 counts. Whether they were hung or whether it was a not guilty is irrelevant for purposes of conviction. She just wasn't convicted. Now, even though the judge could consider all of that relevant conduct from those counts during sentencing, I think that it showed that Elizabeth Holmes, being young at the time and having Sunny Balwani as her mentor and, obviously life partner at that stage of her life, demonstrated that there was supposed to be some leniency for her. So that's why she gets 11 years, 3 months. Now, Sunny Balwani, on the other hand, let's think about him. The prosecution had an opportunity to hone their prosecution, their case in chief against Balwani. And they got the convictions for the patients, those 3 extra counts. I also think that the fact that Sunny Balwani was in charge of the lab, I think, made it a little bit easier to convict him on those counts. I think that Sunny Balwani's emails and that ego, for lack of a better word, really helped solidify his position as the true authority in Theranos. And you remember, for the text messages, I'm ultimately responsible. I'm in charge. This is, my responsibility. He takes a lot of personal blame or personal credit for what's going on at Theranos when he's texting back and forth with Elizabeth Holmes. I think that's ego. I think that's control, to show her that at the end of the day, it's not her company, it's his company that she happened to start. So at this point, you say that during the course of a fraud and then you get convicted, what happens? Well, the judge hits you. And that's what happened to Sunny Balwani. Not also taken, and let's not minimize the fact that Sunny Balwani is also 20 years older than Elizabeth Holmes, and he's an astute businessman, and that kind of came out during the course of the trial. This is a guy that's made millions in Silicon Valley. This is a guy that kind of knows the game. He knows the players. He was the one that molded, formed, whatever the case, whatever the term you want to use, Elizabeth Holmes to go out there and to sell the Theranos dream, because it really was just a dream, and he knew it. So I believe that those are the reasons why the judge hit Mr. Balwani harder than Elizabeth Holmes. Now, let's talk for a second about what I expect for Sunny Balwani. I expect, just like in the Elizabeth Holmes case, his lawyers will file a motion for for an appeal. I believe that his lawyers will file a motion for a supersedious bond. If you recall from some of the previous videos, that's when you ask to be out on bond pending the result of your appeal. Will the judge grant it? I don't know. Judge Davila has shown himself to be a very, I don't want to say lax, because that's not the term I want to use. He's shown himself to be liberal when it comes to sentencing, meaning he's not as hard as some other federal judges are. I know a lot of federal judges, especially in different parts of the country. For example, Florida, in the 11th Circuit down here, where the sentencing guideline recommendation is the sentence. It almost always is a sentence. Now, for Judge Davila to deviate downwards, again, it is his right. He can do it. He's the judge. That's what his job is. But he is very lenient, in my opinion, for purposes of sentencing. And I think that no matter how you look at this case, Judge Davila is looking at it to be fair. He has come off of the sentencing guideline, meaning has sentenced both Elizabeth Holmes and Sunny Balwani lower than what the guideline says they should be. I think he has given them a lot of latitude. I think he's giving them the opportunity to self-surrender. I believe that he is really taking this case seriously, and he is making sure that the interests of justice are served. And really, that is his job, to make sure that justice is happening. It's not about revenge. It's not about getting back at someone. It's not about, making things harder than they should be. It's about the interest of justice. So I think he's done an excellent job of doing that. So at this point, I anticipate you're going to see those post-sentencing motions being filed for Sunny Balwani here soon. And I'm guessing you're going to see, like I said, the appeal. Obviously, he's going to appeal. 10 years, everybody appeals. And part two is going to be, please don't make me go to prison while this appeal is pending, because if I win, because there are some serious issues, some very important legal consequence to this, and I don't want to sit in prison while the appellate court is considering my appeal, because it could take upwards of a year to come up with an opinion. So anyway, that's going to be his position. Will Judge Davila do it? My gut, I don't think he is. I think Mr. Balwani is going to prison on March 15th. He's going to present, and he's going to be in process, and I will let you know what facility the Bureau of Prisons decides he will go to. All right, other than that, let's talk about what other differences between the Sunny Balwani and the Elizabeth Holmes sentencing are. Really not much more, other than the time in prison, other than the special assessment that's really guided by the number of counts of conviction. The rest is pretty much consistent, both self-surrendering, both are going to appeal. So at this point, there's really not much to say, but I will say that the prosecutors did make comment after the sentencing that this is a message to all of the Silicon Valley executives and startup folks, to say this era of loosey-goosey, fake it till you make it, we'll figure it out when we get there, lie to them until you get it figured out culture is done. If that's the way you're going to do business, and you're going to provide false information to your investors, to your stockholders, to your patients, to your stakeholders, whomever it is that's involved in your business, and the government finds out about it, you're going to be prosecuted and you're going to go to prison. So that's what we are anticipating is going to be the change in the culture in Silicon Valley. Now, is it really going to take hold there? Is the lure of this obscene amount of money going to stop people from trying everything they possibly can to get these Silicon Valley type startups to go through? You tell me what you think. I think at the end of the day, prison does not really deter crime. And the reason I say that is when you're talking about, and I keep saying obscene amounts of money, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, people that are involved in these types of ventures, they either make a conscious decision that the risk of prison is worth the reward, or they get so blinded by the lure of that money that they're doing things and they're rationalizing to themselves. Okay, I'm not really lying. I may be stretching, but it's not a lot. We're really going to make this happen. We're going to work hard. It's going to happen in the end. So no, we're not going to hurt anybody. So I think that that's what happens when you talk about these types of ventures. So you tell me what you think. Do you think that this sentencing and the sentencing for Elizabeth Holmes is going to have an impact in the Silicon Valley, in that startup world? Or do you think it's just going to be business as usual because there's so much money at stake that any risk is worth it? Part two is, do you think the prison sentences are significant enough to deter this kind of crime? Meaning, is realistically 8 to 10 years of actual prison time worth the risk of these humongous hundreds of millions, billions of dollars in return? If you think it is, let me know. From my perspective, I truly think that we're not accomplishing anything when it's this kind of dollars, when it's this kind of fame and fortune. People will risk literally everything for a chance at being in that strata. So I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference in Silicon Valley. What it might do is it may make oversight a little bit more detailed. For example, I think you're going to see a lot more investors doing a lot more due diligence than they normally would have. I think you're going to see the government really looking into these startups and just making sure that they're doing the things that need to be done to ensure that if they walk in and the lab's not working and the equipment doesn't work and whatever the case may be, they will shut companies down. When in the old days, I think it was more loose, like, all right, got to get it figured, get it together, guys, and we'll come back. I think those days have come to a close. I think the government is going to be more attentive to what's going on when they do their investigations, when they look into their businesses, meaning the startup business, through oversights like Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. So for now, that's what I got for you. Sonny Balwani's been sentenced. He's going to prison, I believe, on March 15th. Unless, of course, the judge grants him a supersedious bond. I will keep you posted as things happen. Again, if you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you enjoyed the series, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. And as always, leave me your questions and comments down below.